In our previous slide, we were explaining how the planets can be grouped into two distinct populations. We have the inner solar system, the terrestrial planets. We have the outer Jovian or gas giant planets, and they're quite different in characteristics. But solar systems aren't the solar system is not just planets. For example, we already talked about how there's other things were discovered out there. For example, they started discovering asteroids. And at one point, they actually had the first 4 asteroids were in that list of planets. And so Ceres, Pallas, Juno, Vesta, so that was the solar system. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Ceres, Pallas, Juno, Vesta, Jupiter, and Saturn. And about that time they found Uranus, and then they realized, oh no, we need to take those things off the list because they're too tiny. Okay, so they were removed from the list of planets. Okay, so they were actually deleted from the list of planets. And then they discovered Pluto. And they didn't know what it was at first, and so they put it on the list of planets because they didn't realize there were icy things out there. They thought the only options you had were rock and gas. And so it was clearly not a gas giant, so they thought it was made of rock, and so that's why they made it into a planet, because they figured in order to be as bright as it is, a rock would have to be somewhere between Mercury and Mars in size. Well, it's not made of rock, it's made of ice. Ice is very, very reflective, and so that means that Pluto is closer to the size of our moon, or actually smaller than our moon. So Pluto is way too small. Okay, so Pluto was on the list of planets for a long, long time, and then they discovered something slightly bigger than Pluto, and the name it got was Eris. And so they had for temporarily they actually put Eris on the list of planets. And so the solar system was Mercury, Venus, Earth, and then they put Ceres back on the list. Okay, so the solar system was temporarily for about a week Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Ceres, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Eris. But the problem is that Ceres is not even quite as big as Texas. I mean, how can you be a planet if you're not as big as Texas? Okay, so that didn't seem to make sense. And then Pluto still didn't conform. Eris, but there were several other things just barely smaller than those, and so they had the similar orbits and same composition. So they really should have been on the list too. And so they said, well, this is not right. I mean, to exclude those, to arbitrarily draw a size and say if you're 1 kilometer bigger, you're a planet. If you're 1 kilometer smaller, you're not. And so that's when they took these things off. Now, again, most of the asteroids orbit the sun between Mars and Jupiter, though there are a few who have orbits that cross that of Earth. Pluto's orbit is way out there and doesn't conform. Neither does Eris's. Eris's orbit, like Pluto, is very, very elliptical and tilted with respect to the rest of the solar system. Spectrum of Eris, and the original name for Eris was 2003 UB313, and so the spectrum of Eris almost exactly matches the spectrum of Pluto. So whatever Eris is, Pluto's the same thing. Okay, we think that they are icy chunks that were expected to be found out beyond all the solar system by an astronomer by the name of Gerald Kuiper. So we call this the Kuiper belt. Pluto being the biggest, one of the biggest, the Kuiper belt, Eris being slightly bigger, but there's several others that are almost the same size. So these are large Kuiper belt objects out here. So they're like icy asteroids. What are these things? You know, Kuiper belt objects, what I typically call them. The first few were named after centaurs in mythology, so they're sometimes called centaurs. Most astronomers refer to them as Trans-Neptunian objects. When everybody was all upset about Pluto being taken off the list of planets, they actually created a new name called Plutinos to describe these things, thinking that'd make people happy about Pluto again, but that didn't really work either. Okay. So in 2006, you know, after all this discussion about what's a planet, astronomers realized that embarrassingly we had never actually had a definition of planet. And so a committee of the International Astronomical Union actually established a definition. Now, their first definition they established was if it pulls itself into a round shape, it's a planet if it orbits the sun. And that is why they redid the solar system to include Ceres, adding it back to the list of planets. Pluto was on the list, Eris was on the list, and about 20 other objects were on the maybe list, waiting to be seen if they were actually on the list of planets or not. And that lasted for about a week, and then the full IAU, not just the committee, but the full IAU, dismissed the committee recommendation and instead voted for a definition of planet is that it's big enough to pull itself into a round shape, and it orbits the sun, and it is big enough that its gravity has cleared its orbit of all similar sized objects. Eris and Pluto and Ceres do not make that third categorization. Therefore, they are not on the list of planets. There's only 8 planets. However, they do pull themselves in a round shape and orbit the sun, and so things that do that are considered minor planets. And so Eris, Ceres, Pluto, Haumea, Makemake, they are all considered minor planets, or rather dwarf planets. They're all considered dwarf planets. And so that's the term used for those. So our solar system is 4 terrestrial planets, 4 Jovian or gas giant planets, and then a whole bunch of other things. We got Ceres in here, we got Pluto, we got Eris, we got all these other things that are out here. So that's the solar system, together with all these other objects out here that are on the maybe list of dwarf planets. And so, and the maybe list is now up to like 80 different objects. And so, clearly, when I first started teaching astronomy, when I first started, teaching about the Pluto not being on the list, people were upset because it had been taken off the list, and people learned about Pluto and they were happy about it. And I remember going to an elementary school, they had me give an astronomy presentation. All the students, were saying, "Oh, we want Pluto to be on the list of the planets. We want Pluto to be a planet." And I had to explain, if Pluto's on the list, you don't memorize 9 planets. You have to memorize about 30 planets in order. If Pluto's not on the list, you only have to memorize 8 planets. And so the students almost immediately decided that Pluto was not at all a planet. Okay. Nonetheless, if you really wanted to include Pluto, you'd have to include all of those other planets that are out there. Okay. So this is the definition of planet they came up with. It has to orbit the sun, has to be large enough to pull itself into a round shape. That's actually what we call hydrostatic equilibrium. And it has to be big enough for its gravity to clear its orbit. Okay. If it doesn't do that, it's a dwarf planet. Officially, there are at present 5 dwarf planets: Pluto, Eris, Makemake, Haumea, and Ceres. But, as I also said, there's a whole bunch of maybes out there. Okay. And again, 2008, they tried to come up with the name Plutoid or Plutino or something to make people happy about Pluto being off the list, but that term never really caught on, and certainly did not make people happy about Pluto not being on the list. Okay. But as we keep discovering new things, we're finding more and more objects out there that are in this Trans-Neptunian Object list, and many of them are quite large, and many of them do orbit out here as part of